What's up guys, कैसे हो आप लोग? Welcome to the 23 Rides channel. Recently, as you know, I bought a new adventure touring motorcycle, a lighter adventure touring motorcycle if I may call it. And while making this purchase, there were two options that I was totally confused between. One was the Adventure 390 from KTM and the other was the BMW 310 GS. And it almost took me about 3 months to make up my mind which motorcycle I should go with. While making that decision about the motorcycle I need, I actually evaluated both these motorcycles on the basis of 11 points, and in this video I'll be sharing with you those 11 points that I think you should also take a look at if you are making a decision between the Adventure 390 from KTM and the BMW 310 GS. So let's get started with the video. So let's start with the first point. The first point is the riding position. Both the bikes are super comfortable. They are meant for touring, but if I look at the proper riding geometry of both the motorcycles, I think the GS 310 has a better riding geometry. What I mean by that is, if you are sitting and doing long hours on the road, then both the bikes will be same. But if you look at the proper ADV riding geometry that allows a comfortable sitting position and a comfortable standing position, that is where the GS 310 really scores. In the ADV 390, for example, without the 2-inch handlebar risers, you are always very front biased. In this motorcycle, I have put in 2-inch handlebar risers. After that, my position is like this. I can't stand like this completely straight like I used to do on my Tiger. GS 310, you can definitely attain this position because of the high handlebars, not on the ADV 390. Another point to consider is the position of the foot pegs. On the GS 310, the foot pegs are neutral. They are right below you. In the ADV 390, they are a little rear set. And to top it all, in the ADV 390, you have the foot pegs slightly slanted forwards. That also contributes to you always bending forwards when you are saddling. So what I feel is these two things, the handlebar height and the slant in the foot pegs, really spoil the riding geometry of the ADV 390. So you have to make some adjustments to make the riding geometry perfect from an ADV standpoint on the ADV 390. GS 310 comes perfect. It's just perfect for saddling and sitting. And to top it all, the seat is also much more comfortable on the GS 310. Also, since we are talking about the riding geometry as a whole, I also need to mention about the seat height. The seat height on the KTM Adventure 390 is 850 mm, which I believe is almost 10 mm taller than the Tiger 800 XCA that I used to have. So you can very well judge that. But the narrower profile of the seat is really helpful in helping you flat foot the motorcycle. For reference, I am 6 feet tall. I am able to flat foot the motorcycle pretty easily, as you can see. But for shorter riders, this is going to be an issue. GS 310, the seat is much lower, much more friendlier for shorter riders. So net, if I have to talk about riding geometry and give points, I will give all the points to the GS 310. So now let's talk about the power delivery, which is the second point that I considered. And this was a major thing for me. The Adventure 390 offers almost 42 bhp of power, while the GS 310 offers just about 32 bhp of power. That's a huge difference, and this is something that really swung things in the favor of the ADV 390 for me. This machine on the highway is a hoot. It can clock 140, 150 very easily, but the GS 310 I felt really runs out of gas after 100 kmph. People say that it goes to 120 and also touches a top speed of 140. But in my opinion, touching those speeds with all the vibrations coming on the handlebar and you are feeling that the engine is completely strained at the high speeds, this is not what I call high speed riding. But at the same time, if we talk about how the power is spread out throughout the torque band, the two motorcycles are totally different. The Adventure 390 has an amazing mid-range and an amazing top end, but the low end is weak. Again, that is something that you need to maybe modify on the motorcycle by changing the sprocket size or doing some other modifications. But the GS310 has a very good low end. There are no stalling issues in the GS310. First gear, second gear, crawling speeds are very easy to maintain if you're doing proper off-roading. Mid-range is also fine, but I feel the top end is very muted on the GS310. I didn't like it, and to top it all, it felt like a scooter after 110 kmph. So from a power standpoint, from a power delivery standpoint, my marks would go to the Adventure 390. Okay, so the third point that I considered was the long-term interest in either of these motorcycles. For a motorcycle to be relevant for the next 3 or 4 years, I felt a motorcycle that offers more tech would be really something that I would enjoy. I personally was wanting to get a motorcycle which has a TFT display, looks very modern, and has a lot of features that keep you interested. That is something where the ADV 390 from KTM really shines. On the other hand, the BMW GS310 looks like a ripped off version of the fully loaded BMW motorcycles that are almost like 10 plus lakhs in the market to start with, right? So the GS310 felt like a very old motorcycle. I really want the GS310 to have the upgrade of the instrument display. It should get a TFT display, at least similar to what the G310RR has got from the Apache side, but there are no signs of that coming. And the black and white simple display on the GS310 felt very boring to me. So that's why I think if you want a motorcycle that has a modern feel to it and is very enjoyable, then the ADV 390 is the way to go. Next up, let's talk about the wind protection, which is very important on adventure touring motorcycles, because the middle word is touring, while adventure is important to all of us. And while touring, while the seating postures are, I would say, at par with each other, the wind buffeting protection that is provided by the stock windscreen on both the motorcycles is very average. So this is where both the motorcycles could have done a better job. But at the same time, I think even the premium motorcycles need an aftermarket windshield. Hence, I feel both these motorcycles are offering average wind protection, although it seems very strong, but the wind directly hits me at the chest area. And while I am creating videos for you guys, motovlogging, the helmet feels like an air bubble with wind gushing in from all sides. So both the motorcycles, I feel, would need an aftermarket windshield, and that is something that we'll discuss later in one of the other videos. So now let's talk about the elephant in the room, and this is for me one of the major factors, the biggest difference between these two motorcycles: the suspension. The suspension on the ADV 390 is branded as the WP suspension, which has a great lineage, and everybody thinks WP is great, but WP suspension is great on I would say premium motorcycles. Actually, the suspension on the ADV 390 is made by an Indian company called Enduro, something like that. I don't remember that name, and it is rebranded as WP. Net, the suspension on this motorcycle is very stiff. From what I have experienced so far, the front end is bearable, but the rear end does not have even an inch of rebound. Now, after riding it for almost maybe like 800-900 kilometers over the last few weeks, I have made a small change on the rear suspension by changing the setting and softening it by one click. Now it is a little bearable, but if you compare it to what GS offers, the GS suspension is super awesome. Long travel suspension, looks amazing with those golden forks, and is very comfortable off-road, and all the adulations, even on highways when you're touring at fast speeds, they feel like a carpet. So that is one area that I would give the GS310 all the possible points if we are talking about suspension. Being said, there are multiple options to alter the suspension on the ADV 390. There is a aftermarket suspension that is being offered by a company called as Zedling. I think they are based out of Bangalore and multiple cities as well. So, but that's a suspension costs, the new complete rear suspension costs almost 18,000-19,000 rupees. Then there are other local manufacturers who are also creating suspensions for the ADV 390, which is like 13,000-14,000. And some people even tell me that the X-Pulse suspension is a direct fit on the ADV 390. But all those things are modifications that no person would want to make on a brand new motorcycle. That's why I feel that the GS310 with the long travel suspension is top notch in terms of the comfort that it offers on-road and off-road. So now let's talk about the on-road capability of these two motorcycles. On-road, I feel there is absolutely no comparison. The ADV 390 shines all the way. 42 bhp of power. This thing loves being in triple digit speeds. You can cruise on this machine at a speed of 130, 140 kmph all day long, and this is not going to break a sweat. From a nimbleness standpoint, this feels so light. The stock configuration in which the handlebar comes on the Adventure 390, this thing handles like an arrow. You just think about taking a right and this machine will go there even before you execute that turn. So it is super sharp handler. After installing the 2-inch handlebar risers on the machine, I have compromised a little bit on the handling, but then my focus is more on touring and a little bit of off-roads. Comparing to the GS310, I feel at 70, 80, 90 kmph, it's an awesome machine to ride. I personally didn't like the overall experience riding it on road, but people have ridden that machine to all ends of our country. And apart from that, this motorcycle feels a lot more lighter. I'm not sure what is the exact kg difference between the weight of the motorcycles, but I would say this feels while riding a lot more nimbler and lighter. So in short, on road I will give all the marks to the KTM. The real difference between these two motorcycles in their stock configuration comes off-road, and that is where the GS310 really shines. I already talked about the suspension on the GS310. That is something that is very comfortable in the stock configuration, but my major gripe with the BMW GS310 is the lack of tech on the motorcycle. When you are wanting to do serious off-roading, then you need options to play with the ABS settings, the traction control, and all other electronics on the motorcycle. That is something that the GS310 does not even offer. The KTM Adventure 390 would give you options to adjust the ABS on-road, off-road, adjust the traction control, switch off things completely and play with the motorcycle. And that is why I feel with certain modification, the Adventure 390 will be a much more fun motorcycle for off-roads, provided you make some changes to the suspension or get your butt used to the stiff suspension of this motorcycle. So next up, let's talk about which of these motorcycles will you enjoy most if you're riding the twisties in the mountains. I think that's a no-brainer. The KTM is a corner carver, a great handler, and this is something that would really get your adrenaline pumping if you're riding hard on the twisties. The exhaust note also is much more sweeter on the KTM, although both the motorcycles have a very simple exhaust note, but at higher revs, the Adventure 390 exhaust note sounds much more satisfying. So you can check out other exhaust note videos on YouTube, or check out one of my videos where I have shown you the exhaust note. But I felt that the GS310 exhaust note at high speeds, it felt like that I was riding a scooty. This one still feels like a powerful single cylinder, and that's why I feel from a corner carving standpoint, the Adventure 390 is the way to go. You will have fun on this motorcycle while riding in the mountains. Now, most of us want to ride our motorcycles on the highway, but we sometimes have to ride our motorcycle in the city as well. And for a motorcycle of this category, we end up riding it in the city much more. So I feel for city riding, the GS310 feels a lot better because it doesn't heat up as much as the Adventure 390, simply because of the fact that the Adventure 390 has a high compression engine, and this, starts heating up, although with the new improved radiator design, the two radiator fans that are there, this tries to cool things down, but the GS310 is far more relaxed while riding in the city. But while heating is one part of the story, but at the same time, if you want to ride in the city aggressively, I'm not talking about like a chapri, if you want to cut corners and go right left fast, then the Adventure 390 with its far more better handling, sharper handling capabilities is fun. So there is a compromise to make, heating versus handling, and generally I felt that the GS310 feels very good on the city, better than the ADV 390. So when you own a motorcycle, another factor that you need to think about is the service center reach and cost of services, and that is where the KTM wins hands down. KTM has loads of service centers across the country. As an example, since I recently moved to a place in the mountains somewhere near the Kullu city, one of my major criteria of choosing between the motorcycles was which motorcycle has a service center nearby, and KTM has a service center here somewhere in Bhuntar, while for BMW the nearest service center for me right now is in Chandigarh, which is like a 6-7 hour ride from here. That is the case true across the country. BMW has much lesser service centers compared to the KTM, and this is something that you must consider depending on where you live. Apart from that, the service costs are, I would say, a little higher in BMW, because I say little higher because there is a reason to it. The GS requires service every 10,000 kilometers, while the Adventure 390 requires service something between 6,000 to 7,000 kilometers. If you are doing a lot of riding throughout the year, and if you talk about two services, then the Adventure 390 service would be around, say in the range of about 7,000, 8,000 rupees for two services. But for the GS 310, a single service would cost something around 8 to 9,000 rupees. So I think it's a matter of perception about service costs. But when you talk about the cost of parts of a motorcycle, then the BMW will be much more costlier to maintain, because anything from BMW, anything breaks down on the motorcycle, a new part will be costing you a bomb compared to the KTM. And finally, let's talk about the last point, and that is value for money. This is subjective because both these motorcycles are operating almost at the same price point, just a 20,000 difference between the ex-showroom pricing. So if you are a rider who wants a motorcycle that can do it all, and by do it all I mean a motorcycle that can do good off-roads, at the same time it can cruise on the highway at high triple-digit speeds, then the Adventure 390 I feel offers great value for money. But if you are somebody who would want to ride a motorcycle primarily off-road and on-road below 90 kmph, not more than that, not more than 100 kmph in any case, then the BMW 310 GS would be much more suited to you, simply because of the other benefits that it offers in terms of better suspension, better riding geometry. So it's a matter of choices that you have to make. Personally for me, I feel with the tech that is loaded in the Adventure 390, with the power that it offers, with the flexibility that it offers, this is a better value for money proposition. So guys, those were the 11 points that I wanted to share with you that you should actually consider if you are making a choice between the KTM Adventure 390 and the BMW 310 GS. These were the points that I personally considered, and all the opinions that I shared in this video are from my personal experiences. So don't bash me for choosing one motorcycle over the other, but make your choices depending on at least these 11 criterias that I looked at before making the purchase. If you found this information useful, you have the comment section to share your feedback, and stay connected on this channel. Much more great content coming up. Bye bye.